Harry Hamlin, but none of us are wearing togas, I can assure you. But I'm excited to be the moderator of today's discussion. As you can guess, it's about lighting. And in the 20 years that I've been with CE-Pro, I don't know that I recall a category that has grown so rapidly, so fast amongst the integration community. And we're here to find out why with two of the leading experts in the field and talk about what you as an integrator can do to take advantage of this growing trend. So with me today are Tom Doherty, Director of New Technology Initiatives at HCSA. Hi, Tom.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
And then also with me are David Warfel, founder of Designer of Light. Founding designer of Light Can Help You. Let me start that one all over again. Also with me is David Warfel, founding designer of Light Can Help You, and also works closely with the Prosource group. Hi, David.
Hey, Jason. Glad to be here.
All right, let's jump right into it. And I want to let everybody know that after the discussion, both Tom and David are going to be available be able to answer your questions. All right, let's jump right into it. David, let me start with you. A few years ago, you didn't even know about the custom installation industry, but now you're all in. So what happened to bring you into this space?
Jonathan Wesco happened. So he's an integrator out of north central Indiana, the South Bend and Michiana area. And we met through a mutual acquaintance. And Jonathan reached out to me as an integrator. He was doing controls. He knew how to do controls, but he kept seeing plans, lighting plans, that didn't really match the quality of the home being constructed. It looked like somebody just laid out a bunch of circles. He knew it could be better, and so he reached out to me, and every 6 months or so, he'd call and say, hey, would you take a look at this plan? Can you help us rearrange things to make it work better? That spiraled and grew. And it was Jonathan that opened my eyes to this entire category. And he kept coming back to me and saying, David, if you could do this faster and less expensive, that would be great. And if you could do it faster and less expensive, that would be great. And if you could do it faster and less, it just kept, hitting me with this. And once we tweaked things together and figured out how to work together as a designer, as an integrator, then he said, by the way, did you know there's 1,000 more of me? There were 1,000 more integrators out there. And I said, no, I didn't know that. And that's how it started. So we rebuilt the business really to focus on this channel, because the more I learned, this is an incredible opportunity for integrators. And I'm just happy to be a part of it.
So Tom is no stranger to most of the people in the audience. He graced the very first cover of CE-Pro, actually. So thank you for that, Tom. But it was about 3 years ago, I guess it was, you and I sat down at an HTSA meeting, and at that point you were talking about, hey, I'm going to get the community into lighting fixtures. What happened? And tell us about how you knew that was going to be a growth category for this channel.
Yeah, so as you know, maybe some of the people that are watching this know, I've been involved in the custom installation market since the mid-'80s, and have seen all kinds of new categories emerge. And around the early part of 2000, I started a new business model just strictly 100% around evangelizing lighting control. I had seen how reliable, how simple it was, and how useful it was for the kind of projects that we worked on. And that allowed me to do work just outside of Indiana. I was doing projects that were lighting control centric in Florida and New York, California. And I noticed such a great disparity between the quality of lighting in equal homes. A multi-million-dollar home in Florida versus one in another area could have radically different lighting. And for the most part, I noticed that most lighting was commodity-based, contractor, electrician, builder-driven. And in the other areas where it was really good, there was a professional lighting designer involved, and the market was aware of what lighting, could or should be. And I determined, much like all of the other categories that I had seen grow, it was a function of awareness. So I quickly, well, not quickly, about 2010, I built a lighting demonstration lab. I come from the old days of hi-fi, where I used to bring a client in and we would go into the speaker room and we would A/B speakers. People say, well, I can't tell the difference. My hearing's bad. I don't know that there's a difference. And so I would explain to them, we put their music on, we'd A/B speakers, and they go, okay, yeah, I like those better. And so I built a lab where I could compare incandescent, halogen, new LEDs, show them what beam spread was, show them how you could light art with an eyeball above the fireplace versus a precision spec grade fixture versus wall washing versus an art projector. And once people saw it, they could decide for themselves, yeah, I want that. And here in Indiana, where, people don't think many things happen here, indeed, we moved the bar. Almost overnight, my clients in the marketplace were moving from $50 and $100 cans to $300 to $600 recessed specification fixtures. So I saw that opportunity, and speed things up a few years, I started to be reached out by a lot of my peers who said, hey, Tom, you've been doing this lighting thing. How do you do it? Who are the vendors? How do you sell it? What's the margins? How do you do lighting design? How do you charge for it? And I was like, I think the industry's ready. I don't want to start another trade association. However, I'd like to work with a consortium of guys. And then HTSA approached me. And then, that's when I met you 3 years ago. I met you a long time ago, Jason, but we sat down 3 years ago and I kind of said, yeah, this is going to happen. And so we're 3 years into it. So there's the short story.
Yeah, I think you both are, it was the wild, wild west, and you both are kind of Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson here trying to tame this puppy. David, let's turn to you with your work with Prosource. What has been the reaction from that membership, and why is it such a good opportunity for them?
I think I would characterize the response as overwhelming. And I say that because the first time I went to a Prosource event, it was their summit in Nashville, a year and a half ago or so. And we put a booth on the floor, and I didn't leave that 10-foot square carpet the entire first day. We couldn't catch our breaths. We had integrators stacked, multiple people deep, waiting to talk to us about the lighting category. It's like it's been slowly simmering for 2 or 3 or 4 years. Some of them have said, oh, I've been looking at this forever. And finally, we've reached this point where all of the pieces of the puzzle are available to them. Everything is there now. And so it was like the floodgates opened, and we've been running 100 miles an hour ever since that moment. Now, that's not to say there aren't people holding back, but the enthusiasm for this is pretty phenomenal. And I think they're also seeing how panelized lighting systems are changing, how they're tired of dealing with headaches from flickering LEDs that somebody else put in and they have to control. There are a whole bunch of different reasons, but all of those just made the response pretty significant. And they understand that there's, when you ask about the big opportunity in that second part of your question, the opportunity is extraordinary. The only way to go, if you're selling zero lighting fixtures, the only way to go is up. That's the only direction you can go. And who doesn't like to hear that? But you look at the market of how many houses even now are being built, and how many houses are out there in the United States with really poor lighting. And that's just the US, expand it to the world. The opportunity is, we can't fill it. The opportunity is way bigger than we can handle. So
yeah, I love one integrator mentioned to me, when he talks to a client or a GC or whomever, how many houses need AV. Oh, here's what the percent is. Well, how many need lighting? It's always going to be 100%.
Right.
Tom, same question. What's been the response from the HCSA membership, and what's been the opportunity as you see it?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say, tell David, you're welcome. Leading the charge here and kind of opening up a path and, blazing a trail, if you will. Makes things good for everybody. And in all seriousness, I really welcome Prosource finding somebody like David who comes from a different direction than I do, but we share the same mission to increase the quality of the kind of lighting the projects that our people work on, their clients should have. For us, I come from the same shoes as our members. I've run an integration business, and I've seen new categories come, and some people to see the dollar signs and the opportunity. I see, okay, here's all the things that can go wrong, or here are the challenges. And a big part of what my role has been is to share all the bumps and bruises that I've received on my own doing and try to help our people avoid those. So I've been pretty cautious. I've explained, hey, this is clearly an opportunity. And if you can do this and get good at it, it leads to you being exposed to projects earlier. There's all kinds of positives. But I've also been pretty conservative, believe it or not, about how we go about it. So, and that's not to say that Prosource is maybe doing it any differently, but we have we have a clear plan on how we want people to do this and go about it. And we're 3 years into it, and we are barely to the moon, and we're aiming for Pluto. So the reception has been very strong. Initially, many of our members totally got it and they're ready to jump in, or they were already kind of doing it. Others were like, I don't get it, Tom. And then the following year, okay, yeah, I get it. I need to send my people to your trainings. And just yesterday, I got a call from one of our members and said, all right, we've been looking at these things. Give us the roadmap on how to do this. So the reaction's been great. And we have built the building blocks and we have the plan in place for our people to execute. But this is not an overnight thing. This is not like identify what vendor partners need to be. What lighting fixture brand should I sell? That is like the last thing they'll be looking at. And this is a slow thing to get right. You really need the foundation right, because you can screw up an audio or a video installation and kind of work around it. You get the lighting in the wrong place. All of a sudden, the kitchen cabinets are going in, and wait a second, how come the fixtures are obscured? Or, there's all kinds of bad things that can happen, and they're very expensive to fix after the fact. So, it's been going very well, but, this is not a race.
Let me stay with you. Let's talk a little bit about that roadmap that you mentioned, kind of big picture. What are the keys to success in this lighting category for an integrator?
Yeah, so I believe that there are three. The first one is to get knowledge and to get training and to learn lighting so that you can competently, communicate to the people you're working with, the builder, the architect, the electrician, the client, that you are at least as smart as everybody else is in the room about lighting, and most likely can be recognized as the true expert in the room about lighting. So getting that training and learning about, how your eye works and how lighting works and what a foot candle is and all these sort of things are fundamental. The next thing is to invest in your business and build out some sort of demonstration showroom or demonstration capability in your showroom so you can show people what you're talking about and have them see these things, because seeing is believing. People believe their eyes more than their ears. They believe their eyes. And then third, once the client is like, okay, you know more about lighting, and the kind of lighting that you're showing us we want in our project, what's the next step? And at that point you have to say, well, you need a lighting design. And that area, there's multiple ways to go, but ultimately you need to be able to provide a lighting design service, whether you're growing it internally organically, whether you're going out and doing the buy versus build and then hiring a professional lighting designer and bringing them in your camp, just like you might have done a few years ago, hiring an IT professional or hiring an AMX Crestron Savant programmer. Or third, create a third-party relationship, either with a successful lighting designer in your market or hire somebody like David's company, like Can Help You. So it's a 1, 2, 3. Be competent, be able to show it, and then deliver the service. At that point, then you can deliver the fixtures, but then you're on the hook. Then you have to execute. And executing a lighting installation has got the complexities of delivering any of these other technologies, and maybe more so because you're early in this experience.
David, you mentioned the response has been overwhelming with the Prosource group, but why are some members still hanging back and not getting into this?
Well, as Tom pointed out, it's because we didn't have him. But in Prosource, actually, I do want to thank Tom because when I first got into this, all I heard about was Tom Doherty, and it's like, oh well, Tom's doing this and Tom's doing that, and HTSA is doing that, and it's sort of like, well, we got to catch up with Tom. We got to get into this. So it kind of lit a fire under us in Prosource to have some of that already happening in the industry and say, okay, what are we going to do? And at that point, I think a lot of our integrators were holding back because they don't want to look dumb. So Tom's first point of getting educated, they knew they weren't the expert in the room, and nobody wants to go into a situation and not feel competent. But they didn't even know where to get that learning. There's different organizations out there that provide it, and you can spend the next 10 years getting continuing education or education in lighting and still not be ready to sell a light fixture. And they knew that. Some of them had taken courses here and there, but there wasn't really a clear path for them. And I think that fear of in one of my slideshows, I put the little emoji of the face plant. Nobody wanted to have that moment where oh man, we just stepped in it big time. And so they were staying back until they felt like they had a clear path forward, the knowledge they needed, the ability to demonstrate it. Some of them, I've talked to so many integrators who said, we got into lighting, we did a room in our showroom and it's horrible, because they did it themselves without quite that knowledge step first, and did that, and they didn't know who to talk to about design either. They tried working with designers in their area and it hadn't gone well, or there weren't designers in their area, or et cetera. And they didn't know how to find one to hire them, to be on their staff. It's just a huge knowledge gap that I've started to illustrate. It's this, Indiana Jones kind of pit with all these little spikes at the bottom of it. And how do you get from point A to point B? Yeah, they know there's gold on the other side. They know there's success on the other side, but there wasn't a bridge. There wasn't a safe way across. And I think that's what's held them back. And I think they're smart to do so, right? We make movies about the people that just swing on a rope over that because it's it's not what the rest of us do. So
the category is not alone in terms of reticence. I know I could think about wireless audio or security. These are other areas where integrators have really kind of been, they put their toe in the water before they jump in. All right, Tom, let me turn back to you. You mentioned those 3 keys to success. You talked about lighting design. What would you estimate the number of projects are out there that actually have professional lighting design, and where's that trend going?
It depends on the region. If you're in New York City, much higher percent than 0. If you're in Indiana, it's 0, unless you count me on the jobs that I still do. Although I don't know if I would consider myself a professional lighting designer. I guess I get paid for it, so I guess technically I am. But in all seriousness, there are certain markets, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, Denver, the mountains, the Bay Area have had strong, well-known lighting designers that and here's the difference. There are lighting designers throughout the U.S., but most of them work on commercial projects, commercial buildings, hotels, restaurants, museums, stadiums, things like that. The ones that work in the residential market are a lot more limited, and so it's a very, very low percentage. I think what we are doing in terms of increasing the awareness of high performance lighting, we'll start to see more professional lighting design firms try to figure out how they can provide and expand their market. But I think it's going to remain pretty low. I mean, I'll just tell you this. We work on a lot of high-end homes where the architect's involvement was just the floor plan, and then they were done. Most high-end projects throughout the country are design build by high-end contractors. So another question would be, how many professional architects are on the job from the beginning of the plans all the way through the punch list? That's a really low number too. And then if you ask, okay, how many lighting designers there are, it's teeny, teeny, teeny. I mean, it's 0.0001 maybe. And so if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, and I know you have another session here at CEDIA Expo Virtual that's going to talk about how integrators can work more closely with professional lighting design. So I encourage everybody to look for that session. Let me move on. Go ahead, Tom.
If I could just add for a second. Yeah, I think it's fair also that lighting designer is a sometimes abused word. And in the profession of lighting designers, much like architects that are AIA certified are different than somebody that can't stamp those plans yet designs houses. There are people that design homes that are not architects. And there are people that design lighting that are not professional lighting designers. And I don't want to paint a tight box around this, but the people that I am moderating a conversation with are part of the International Association of Lighting Designers, so a worldwide organization of lighting designers that have kind of the same ethos as an architect, where they're strictly design, they don't sell any kind of product, they're not influenced by what they're speccing because of any kind of profit motivation. So those IALD members, those are the ones that are super strong in those markets I previously mentioned, and they're an opportunity for integrators. So I'm trying to bridge, or I'm trying to create some diplomacy where both sides can understand what each other's motivations are, because I know that successful collaboration between professional lighting designers and integrators can be a win for both parties. So that's tomorrow.
I would look forward to that. Let me move on. And let me ask you this first, David. What are some mistakes that integrators make in lighting?
All of them. But I would say the biggest one that I've seen that happens over and over again is that they go into this to sell light fixtures. And that's the outcome. I think that needs to be the outcome. But if you go in and say, hey, we sell downlights, well, so does everybody else, right? And that'd be like going in and saying, hey, we sell, sound systems. Well, so does everybody else. What is it that sets an integrator apart from a big box retailer is, yes, the quality of what they can procure and install, but it's also just that the integrator knows how to put it all together for an experience. Knows how to put everything together for a better experience. And if you come in and say, we've got a downlight and it's great and it costs $500, and the contractor and the homeowner and the architect say, well, what's wrong with this $50 one? Well, that's a hard sell. I mean, you can do it. But if you come in and put those on the side and say, we can transform the way your home lives with light, and show them how that's possible, the fixture sale is just the add-on at the end. In essence, by the time you get through that, it's like, okay, and it costs $500 for the stuff that does this. all right, sign us up. It's a much, much easier conversation. So yes, you're all going to sell downlights, but don't make that the only thing you do. And then I would say, there's a ton of mistakes. Tom and I could probably talk about mistakes for hours. I think we have about 45 houses in the process right now, and we make at least one mistake on every project. Hopefully the client never finds out, right? Right, because we fix it. But when you're working on that many projects, you get those mistakes, you amalgamate them, you pull them all together, and you help the integrator. Don't make that mistake next time. So Tom mentioned the downlights too close to the cabinets. Well, it's like it looks good on a plan, but then they put a 6-inch crown molding on the top of those cabinets, and whoops, So I would say not studying the drawings deeply enough, or not understanding how the architecture is actually going to get put together is a common mistake. But there's a bunch of them. I would say the biggest is probably just thinking that all you have to do is offer a better fixture, and that will convince people. It will convince some people, but if you want to convince them all, you've got to go for the experience.
Yeah, experiential sale, just like in AV. Tom, same question. What mistakes are integrators making out there?
There's a lot more flexibility when they are putting speakers and other devices in the home, and the number of fixtures that go in a home are 10x the number of speakers, and yet we have the same framing conflicts or construction conflicts, plumbing, ductwork, these sort of things. And so if you design the plan and then you order all the fixtures and then wait a second, these aren't going to fit, or there's a joist going right down the middle of the door header, or the door opening, you were thinking it's going to be a single fixture, and now what do? Well, I add another one, I put them on either side, or I convince the builder to cut the truss. I mean, it's really not understanding the construction drawings, and you really have to think in 3D when you're doing lighting, as compared to, you can get away with a lot more. You can say, hey, I want the TV there and the speakers there, and the interior designer says, there's no way. Okay, we'll put it on this wall. Well, I mean, a light has to go where a light needs to go. And so I think it's like not really completely understanding the challenge of the equation. So yeah, there's lots of mistakes, and we could talk for hours about all of them, but I would say that is a key one.
Yeah. All right, Tom, let me stay with you. Where can integrators learn about lighting, and what are some resources out there that are available to them?
So, I mean, I started out, I first started out going to manufacturers trainings. There used to be, Cooper had a school called The Source. I don't know if they still do or not. Juno, before they were bought by Acuity, had a school, the 2 or 3 day seminars and such. Early on with HTSA, we partnered with the American Lighting Association, and they primarily serve the lighting showroom market, but they have developed their own training called the Residential Training Manual, and they offer a 3.5-day boot camp where you sit in a classroom for 3.5 days and you learn the fundamentals of lighting. HTSA has created our own version now of that. I know that Prosource has created Prosource University, and David has authored a number of modules for lighting training. There are books. There are other organizations. The International Engineering Society, I think, is one. Is that one?
Illuminating.
Illuminating, that's what it is.
Yeah.
The Illuminating Engineering Society. Anyway, the IES.org is a fantastic resource. They have all kinds of white papers, and they are more and more paying attention to the residential side of lighting. So there's countless sources. Maybe David could jump in and share some that I may have missed.
Yeah, David, is there any others out there?
Well, I think if you're in a buying group, start there, because if you're in HTSA, go to Tom. Tom's going to have a list of those, and not just a list, but an order in which to start, I think, because there are there's an overwhelming number of ways to learn about lighting, and my answer would be all of them are good at some level, right? You're going to get something from every lighting seminar you go to. But what do you do and in which order? So of course that's why Prosource built our approach to that, which we call the lighting technology certification. And but in addition to those things, I would say that light and health is a huge conversation. There's some other discussions about that during CEDIA, but I would go to the lrc.rpi.edu, which is the Lighting Research Center at Rensselaer, and that they have just launched a new website that's pretty phenomenal in terms of understanding the interaction between light and health and how to integrate that into space. So that's one that Tom didn't mention. Of course, there's Rocky Mountain Lighting Academy that is a summer program that has a very solid reputation. I would echo what Tom said. He began with manufacturers. Unless you know the fixture itself and the manufacturer that produces it, you're not going to be in a good position to sell it. So I think the manufacturer training, I'm a huge fan of going to the facilities where they're made and meeting the people behind it, so you know that particular company's capabilities, whether they're custom or whether it's commodity. You'll get a feel for that if you really know the company. So those are just a few I would add into that. Oh, one more is trade shows like CEDIA. Go to all the education at CEDIA, go to Light Fair, go to LED Specifier Summit, go to Light Ovation, the symposium. That's another great source of education.
So you hit on wellness there and human-centric lighting. We didn't even get into that whole conversation and how that's affecting this category. But we have questions coming in, and I know that the listeners and watchers of this session are going to want to ping you guys with questions. So Tom and David, thanks for the conversation, and let's turn to the questions now.
Hi, Jason.
Hey, Jason. Tom. We've got a question in there on writing out a list of the training resources. Tom, you want to do that? You want me to do that, or should we clash? Right. Is it arm wrestle for that?
Perhaps you could start typing some of those up, or maybe I could type some of them up and you could. I think this is one we follow up with in terms of the order. But I mean, we can definitely type out the answers here to those.
Well, who would you go to first for someone who doesn't know anything about, like, let's assume that this is brand new to them. And I think you and I would both agree, well, come to us first, right? If you're in one of our buying groups, our respective buying groups. But outside of that, for the folks who are not involved in a buying group, where would you go? What would you say is the first choice for you?
I would actually say the ALA. That's honestly, I went through and checked that program out. They produce a nearly 900-page residential lighting training manual. They used to have a 3.5-day boot camp where you would go and stay there for 3 days and get all that. So, but you were able to join the ALA, order that book, study it on your own. They have quizzes at the end of each chapter. You can then take a test online after you feel like you've understood it. And if you pass it, then you earn the American Lighting Association Lighting Specialist Certificate. So it's a very good starting point, and one that's available.
I think I'd agree with you there.
Start.
Yeah, I think I'd agree that ALA is a great first step in there. I've been a little frustrated in that some of the educational material there doesn't fit exactly with what our integrators need, but it's so accessible and so focused on, applicable to residential that I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, as a good starting point. So Matthew, that was your question. Yeah, we were answering it right when you typed it in. Jason, you're muted if you are.
So Gordon says in the tunable lighting fixture market, it seems that in general, there were very few high-end aesthetic fixtures available, like pendant lights. So I guess he's saying he's not seeing tunable and decorative, and that is a fact. Unless you're looking at some, exotic linear solutions where you can populate them with tunable linear and they're bending them in extrusions. But yeah, that is, frankly, we are on the bleeding edge of this. Most of the lighting industry is not that focused on tunable solutions. And it's really our channel through, I think, maybe the initial exposure of Ketra. And our channel really saw that. Ketra had been out for a number of years, and the professional lighting people were like, yeah, that's cool, but, they didn't really spec it that much. And really our industry is the one that is kind of demanding and looking for tunable solutions. So, and right now we're a small part of the market. So it's going to be a while before you see it migrate, I think, broader in the decorative. I think it's just the vendor partners that have identified this channel, USAI, Tech, WAC, Ketra, that's a pretty small group of architectural fixture companies. And, we're really the lion's share of the market when it comes to tunable solutions. And we as an industry are really just kind of starting. So that's what I believe the answer to the why is.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on to that, Tom. A story from earlier this year, the ALA, which we just recommended for their education, was actually involved in a lawsuit against the state of California in an attempt to prevent California from limiting the sale of decorative incandescent bulbs. So the ALA went to bat for the decorative manufacturers who are not wanting to give up the incandescent bulb. So when you talk about, they're not there at the tunable, there's still a lot of them with a lot of fixtures, a lot of, what they build is designed to be, I've heard interior designers call it the jewelry of the home. And jewelry is actually decoration. Right, it's not functional most of the time. I wear a ring. There's no function to this. In fact, it can hurt me if my finger gets smashed. Right, but and I think a lot of decorative fixtures are that way. They're not thinking about necessarily what light is going to come out of it. I hung the chandelier in the background, and people hang that above their dining room table, and the ceiling is well lit, but the table isn't. So I think that decorative market is just so different that we haven't seen the tunable in there yet. Well, maybe eventually we'll get warm dim. I'll be excited about that. So,
Jason, you want to take charge here now?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions too, but here's another good question that came in from Matthew again. What's your advice on how to get in front of the building process, considering we normally are some of the last ones to be added into the conversation? Lighting normally is already specified by the electrician or the architect or others. What are some ways to get traction to be called upon first?
The architect, right? I mean, the architects typically don't sell fixtures, but everybody down the food chain from there might be selling fixtures, and so you might be stepping on toes, but architects typically don't. And so if you can get in that early, that's awesome. If you can do lunch and learns for architects, and they are also the ones who typically, in my experience, know that they could use some help. They do it. But they know they could use some help. So if you can get in at that point, then it gets you to the table before anybody else knows it's even a project. Tom, how about you? What would you say is the way in?
I would say that, in markets where the architect is really the main influencer on the project, that would be yes. But I find that a big part of the country is really builder driven, the homeowner, when they're designing a custom home, is selecting that custom builder, and that custom builder has got all the control over the project. And, you as an AV integrator, you're trying to woo that builder, so that builder is insisting that you're on that job. Now that builder has a strong relationship with that electrician. They might even hunt together. You know, they might even be brother-in-laws. I mean, but my point is that there's a lot of resistance in you getting into this because the builder's like, why should you do this? Why should we go with you? I'd rather not, because as you mentioned before, there's one thing that builders are really interested in, and that's easy. You know, they don't want to add complexity to the process. So for me, it is those 3 steps. You know, you have to have that foundation so you can really be recognized that you're competent in the subject. You have to be able to demonstrate and show the differences between that contractor grade lighting and, you know, what's possible with spec grade high performance stuff. But most importantly, you have to have that lighting design capability, and it's either growing it organically or it is partnering with somebody like your firm, David. You know, if you can provide the design, the architect and the builder will really see the value in that. The builder, I've found, really welcomes our drawings now that we even put the outlets on there now, because face it, so many jobs that we're on that involve lighting, the lighting happens during the walkthrough. You know, most lighting plans are permit sets, and what actually goes in the house happens during a walkthrough with the interior designer, the homeowner, the electrician, and the builder. But if you can, and I've demonstrated this, if you can generate a drawing set, everybody really likes that. And then the builder's calling you early and saying, hey, I need you to do a design. And when you're doing the design, then you're providing the fixtures. So long answer, but that's been my experience in the Midwest, and I think that is the experience throughout the country, unless you're in a market where, and on certain level of house where there is already lighting designers driving it. So
yeah, I think you took the words out of my mouth. I just was speaking with an integrator, New York based, very architecturally focused, opened up a West Coast operation, and it was builder focused. Just to your point, you know, the 2 different influencers there, which took him a while to get used to. He thought it was going to be more architecturally influenced there. Couple of questions. Where does shading fit into this? You know, shading and the control of natural light should be an important part of lighting design. And, you know, I think of our house where a lot of times we don't turn the lights on in the room, you know, until the evening comes, especially if we got big windows and things like that. Is there a lighting design plan that should take place for a room with no lights on?
You know, so Tom, you didn't jump on that. I'll jump on it. In terms of natural light as the key component. So what happens with lighting designers like me is that we end up designing for the worst case scenario. In other words, nighttime when there's no natural light. But I would say that, you know, drawing on my architectural experience, I would say that the best homes actually have daylighting as a foundation in their design. So it's actually the house is sited, is put on the site with light in mind. So it's angled, the windows are put in to know where the daylight is going to be coming in, to know where it needs harvested, to know where it needs controlled. And then shades, I think, are absolutely critical to a good home and a good lighting design, so that you can, you know, control the sunlight. And I would be personally happiest in a home that used 0 artificial light during the day. You know, that used none of it. That between windows and skylights and light monitors and, you know, all the other technologies we have to harvest daylight and shades, we could do a home that, you know, for most of the day works. Now, of course, most of my clients before COVID, they weren't home then. They were home in the evenings and the mornings. And that, you know, then we needed artificial light.
I think the other thing, though, is, and this is an experience that most people have not had great architectural lighting design. And so myself, Jason, most people, when they think about lighting and the way homes are lit by electricians and builders, it's just to provide general lighting. But when you start lighting vertical surfaces and you start lighting the art on the wall or objects or architectural or decorative objects, even during the day. I mean, I've got plenty of light coming in the living room, but you know, if I've got people over during the day and we're in that room, I will turn on those art lights and it makes a difference. So that's one of the greatest opportunities, is that most people have crappy, normal pedestrian lighting. And so it's only up for this opportunity. And it's important to learn and experience this stuff and be able to demo it. I mean, be in your corporate office or your showroom with lights coming in your conference room, but then also start having an adjustable art light and enhance those things. And okay, we don't like that, we don't need that, we don't think we need it, turn it off. And people are going, no, turn that back on, that looked better. And that's the whole thing. You have to be able to demonstrate these concepts for people to appreciate them. But I've just discovered, you know, by creating awareness and people seeing it, it's something they want. But we're not there because most people aren't showing it. Most people, you know, aren't doing it.
Another thing that came to mind is landscape lighting. Is that fit into this? Is it a completely different skill set to do design for landscape lighting than you would for interior, or is that one of the elements of like the ALA training and things like that?
Not really. It is I wouldn't say it's a different skill set. It's an additional skill set, or it's got another set of, you know, there you're like really paying attention to what the plant is, what it looks like, how fast it grows. It's a different set of issues. And usually landscape, you know, some professional lighting design companies have really good strength in both, but often, you know, you find people that really specialize in landscape lighting design versus interior. Not that they couldn't maybe under certain circumstances do both, but it is another skill set, and one that the ALA doesn't really teach.
They don't, okay. Tom, let me follow up on something you were saying earlier about kind of you need to either nurture somebody within your organization to get the design skill. You need to either partner with a lighting design firm out there, or you need to actually hire somebody who's a lighting designer. Is there a pecking order to those three, or is it really depend on the skill sets of your employees and your attitude towards the market? Where should they go? Which of those three is the best way to go? Well,
you know, if you're going to do it organically, you better have, you know, you have to have somebody that's passionate about it and excited about it. It's like the earliest, it's not the exact same analogy, but the earliest days of custom install, before we had automation systems, you know, we program IR remotes to control stuff. And then when Crestron and AMX came out, that technician that really liked it, that self-taught them and played with and learned how to program it, they ultimately became, you know, a programmer. So is there somebody in your office that, you know, either loves lighting control and now is excited about lighting and wants to, you know, learn from David or go and get trained and all that, then great. But it's nothing you can really force feed. So it's either you know you have that in your company or you believe you do. But ultimately you have to have that ability to deliver it. And probably the fastest way, well, I don't know if it's the fastest way, but an ever increasing way is like David's company, like, can help you and third party it, and you're in it overnight, you know, pretty much, because they're doing it for you. It's much like an architect hiring a structural engineer or an MEP to, you know, do the technical plumbing electrical plan that needs to be stamped. So it's normal, or even in our earliest days, you know, hiring an acoustician. You know, I don't have an acoustician on my staff, but boy, this project really, really needs acoustical analysis. So let's go, you know, bring that third party in.
We have 30 seconds here. David, let me ask you this. Somebody's asking, what about knowledge for local or national electrical codes when designing the layout? How much knowledge do you have to have of those? 30 seconds.
You either need to know it or you need to figure out who's going to take responsibility for knowing it. So, a lot of times we rely on, we have to have a basic understanding of the codes across the country, but then we're going to talk to the electrician or the builder, because ultimately when it comes down to codes, the AHJ, the authority having jurisdiction, they're going to enforce some of it and they're not going to enforce some of the others. And so you really want to find out what is it that they're looking for and make sure that you can meet that. But that does get tricky. It's a tricky question. You should know what you do. And most of the time, the local organizations will help you with that. They'll have seminars and things to help you with codes. So know it, because you hate to be ripping out fixtures.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are up against the time. There were other questions come in, and I apologize, we didn't get to all of them. But fantastic job, great conversation. Hopefully it gets everybody excited about this category, as excited as you two guys are, and as I am, and a lot of other integrators are. Tom Doherty and David Warfel, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Tom, always good to spar with you. And for those of you that answered asked questions, feel free to reach out to us after this is done, and we'd be happy to try and get those answered. And thanks, Jason.
Thank